All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Behind the Scenes with Cookeville Lifestyle. And today we have very special guest and my dear friend, Philip Gibbons.
Chelsea, how are you?
I am wonderful. How are you, Philip?
I'm well. Thank you so much. Proud to be here.
Well, thank you for coming. It is truly an honor because Philip is a pro at this.
Oh, I don't know about that.
I'm sure you know who he is, but if you don't, you clearly don't listen to country music or like music at all. You don't listen to terrestrial radio in this area. Philip has been the voice of Cookeville for 50 years.
Just celebrated that 50-year anniversary in radio back in October.
Yes, and it was an event to be at. I swear, the place was packed. There were famous people there speaking. Philip is a very popular guy.
Thank you.
Rightfully so. He's just a gem. And so anyways, now that you're in the hot seat, things are going to be a little different because normally Philip is the one interviewing.
Roles are being reversed.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. See, Philip is probably going to help me spit out my words multiple times during this.
You do a great job.
Because I lose them all the time, and Philip just has them bank vaulted in his brain from doing this for so long. Anyways, we're so happy to have you. And
Thank
I've
you.
known Philip and I go way back.
We do.
I met Philip when I was still in the music industry.
You did.
I think we met
Sure did.
backstage at the Grand Ole Opry.
I was broadcasting my show that afternoon from backstage at the Opry, and we just began talking. You were there with an artist. I can't remember who it was.
It might have been Daly and Vincent.
It might have been. It might have been. And you had said something about possibly moving to Cookeville, and that's kind of how it all started.
Yes, and Leanne was with you that night.
Yes, she
I met
was.
her.
Correct.
And that's how it started. And then we kept in touch. But I had people, even before that, come to Cookeville to be on your show during their radio tours.
That's
and
correct.
A few different artists, but we hadn't ever connected really.
Exactly.
So after that, we kept in touch, and then we moved to Cookeville, and Philip was the only person I knew in Cookeville, literally. And he just has been such a dear friend, him and his wife, Sue, and his whole
thank you.
family, and Julie and Leanne.
Thank you.
And they're a beautiful family, and I'm very grateful and blessed to have you in my life.
Well, and we feel the same way.
Well, thank you. And beyond that, Philip is the one that, when I was still in the music industry, told me about Jake Hoot, and I met with Jake, and
Yes.
we helped him. I started working with Jake before he won The Voice.
We had just a casual meeting. We grabbed a coffee that morning, and Jake said, yeah, I would love to meet her. We'll just talk about some things. Then here you ended up helping manage him.
Yes.
And yes.
He needed people on his team. He definitely did. So that's how that connection happened, is Philip. And I mean, that's how a lot of connections in my world happened in Cookeville, is Philip.
I mean, well, thank you. You kind of moved here, though, with, I don't think you really had a big plan.
No,
Your
I was still
husband,
in the music industry.
Yeah, it was moving here with his job. And so, yeah, you've come a long way, baby, as they say.
Well, I don't think that you knew, I don't think you understood what I was doing when I told you about the magazine.
I didn't, but wow.
Huh. And I was like, but I want to put you in the first edition. And he was in the first edition. I just opened it up and I already found a typo. This is how, on the struggle bus we were for the first edition. There is a typo in Philip's article, and I'm very sorry, but I promise it's corrected on the website.
It is fine.
And digitally, I'll make sure it's corrected.
I was thrilled to be in the
Philip
magazine.
was one of the most influential people in the very first class, and rightfully so. Everybody in town loves and knows Philip, and I was just excited to feature somebody that I know and am so close to in our first issue. But we launched it, and I was happy to have Philip a part of that first one. But since then, it feels like years ago. But since then, Philip has done so much. He just celebrated his 50th year in radio. He was in the Tennessee Radio Hall of Fame. That might have been beforehand. It was beforehand because we mentioned that in the article.
I think that was 2019.
Yes. You've hosted the Grand Ole Opry how many times?
13 consecutive years. What happens is the Opry partners with certain regional radio stations, and once a year they would allow that station to, what they would do, they would offer discounted tickets to listeners of those stations, and then somebody on the air would be able to guest announce for like 30 minutes. And
Yeah.
so thankfully I did it once and they had me back 12 more times.
Well, he's a pro. And you've done CMA Fest, hosting stages
hosted
there.
numerous shows in Nashville through the years.
And you've won CRS awards, which CRS, for Inside Baseball, for people that don't know, is Country Radio Seminar.
Yes.
And it is a 3-day crazy fest. But at the very final day of the 3 days, everyone is not feeling great because there's too much, things flowing throughout the week.
Correct.
But that night they have a big dinner where they award radio stations
Sure.
and people in the industry with certain things that is voted on by industry people. So it does mean more, I think, when only industry people can vote on it. And Philip has won that award several times.
Well, I thank you. I have, and I was honored to be listed among the top 5, and so we'll find out in a few weeks whether I do or not. But just an honor to be nominated. Our radio station is nominated.
And it's the medium or small market?
Small market.
Small market,
Yeah, small market.
category.
Correct.
So there's a bunch of different categories.
And that night is also the New Faces show.
Yes, which
that's
is
where
very
they will.
fun.
Yes, that's where they will introduce to the audience the people they think are going to make a huge impact in the coming months and years. And
Right. And it's normally, I've seen Luke Combs play at
Yes,
that. They're normally
yes.
spot on
they-
with
absolutely.
their predictions.
Last year it was Jelly Roll. I'm trying to think of a couple others, but
Kane
yes,
Brown,
Kane
I
Brown
think, has done
correct,
it.
Correct.
Carly Pierce.
Yes.
Kelsey Ballerini.
Yes.
Every star you've known today has performed at that. And it's a really cool experience because what do they play? 20-minute sets, 15
Probably 20 minutes or so.
But it's an intimate setting where you really get to see their raw talent
Yes.
early on.
Yes, exactly.
So that's always fun. Some of the things you get to do in the music industry. The
It is
perks.
fun.
And Philip came to, when I was working with Clay Walker's charity, I did all the PR for his charity event because he has MS.
Yes.
And I don't remember if I'd already moved to Cookeville or not, but Philip came backstage and interviewed him.
Third and Lindsley is where we were.
Third and Lindsley, yes.
How long have we known each other, Chelsea? 10 years?
It was before we moved. Yeah, it must have been 10 years because we moved here in 2016 and
Okay.
we'd known each other before that. So,
Maybe longer.
yeah. But that was such a fun night. And I remember looking over during the concert and Sue and Philip were in the front row just standing. Because I'll tell you, you forget all the songs that Clay, all his hits.
He's an amazing, still is, was and is today.
Yes. And he can perform. And even though he has MS, you would never know.
Yes,
He
exactly.
can sing better
He
than
certainly can.
most of them.
I agree.
But anyway, that's another story about our history. But Philip, what are your plans now? What are we doing over at the Country Giant?
Well, still actively involved in the day-to-day operation of the radio station, especially everything connected with the Country Giant. People ask me, when are you going to retire? When are you going to retire? I have no desire to retire right now. I'm having a blast. I enjoy getting up of a morning and coming into work. And someone said, you will probably know when it's time. And I guess when I do get up and say, oh, I don't want to go into work today,
Yeah.
maybe that's a sign, but I don't think I'm even close to that right
And you're
now.
not pulling the early shift hours.
Right,
It's
right.
not like you got to be on at 6 a.m. Otherwise, you might have thrown in the towel by now.
That is possible.
But you do middays from 11 to
10 to 3.
10 to
Yeah,
3.
10 to 3.
Okay, so that's a lot longer than I thought. But the Philip Gibbons show is from 10 to 3 daily.
That is correct.
Country Giant.
Exactly.
94.7, the Country Giant. But Philip also in his personal life had something wild happen. Philip is a very active, since I've known him. We've gone to dinners. He'll get like the salmon with the broccoli. He won't even eat all of it. And he walks every day, works out. He's very active. And Philip had to have quadruple bypass surgery last year.
Can you believe
right?
that?
I can't.
You talk about a shock.
It was, but thank God you figured out what it was.
Yes.
It was the calcium score.
Yeah, I've told this story many times, and if you've heard it, then I apologize. But I want to tell it so I can help others be proactive
Right.
about their health. But like you said, I've been walking for 25, 30 years, a couple of miles a day, up hills, down hills, working out at the YMCA. My parents are well into their 90s right now and in relatively good health. My cholesterol was just a little bit high,
Mm-hmm.
so my primary care physician wanted me to have a coronary calcium test.
Mm-hmm.
I'd never heard of that. It's non-invasive. It takes like 15 minutes. There's nothing to it. You go to imaging. They take a couple of pictures. A high score can indicate possible calcium buildup. The perfect score is 0. Mine was 1100. So red flags go up automatically, and come to find out, further testing revealed 4 blockages, 75% or more. All the while, I'm walking 2 miles a day up hills, no symptoms, no shortness of breath, no pain whatsoever. Thank God for the calcium test. And I encourage you to ask your doctor, is this test right for you?
Right, exactly, because it saved your life.
It did. It did. I like to think that. And it hopefully helped me from having a heart issue, a heart attack, or whatever. Thankfully, that's behind me. But
And they caught it while you were still young enough, you know?
thank you.
Well, I think Philip's young. I mean, come on. If you know Philip, you think he's young too. He has his like boy nights every week. Philip is a social butterfly out and about.
I just like to have a big time.
He does. So he had the quadruple bypass surgery at Cookeville Regional.
Yes. Can't say enough good things about the care that I received, before, during, and after. Top notch.
Yes. And he recovered like a champ.
I think so. I think so.
You were in physical therapy for a while.
A little bit.
Cleared to start working out again.
At the rehab center, and they do a fantastic job. And of course, after major surgery like that, you're a little weak for a few days, a couple of weeks, but you slowly, of course, they have you up walking the day after surgery.
Right, to prevent blood clots.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. But, that's been over a year now.
You would never know that happened to you.
Well, thank you.
You're still the same Philip. Nothing has changed. Your energy level is still high.
The only way I know is that little scar right there.
Yeah.
Then I saw the other day where Dr. Powell was doing that same type of surgery with the Da Vinci robot.
Oh, I've heard about that.
Amazing. Now, they didn't do that for me.
That was a little too early before the robot came, but I don't know that I want the robot. I know how I feel about that.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the fence about that, but thankfully that's behind me, and I hope I never have to figure that out, and I hope you don't. But CRMC, fantastic.
Yes, and then I just want to tell one more story about Philip.
Sure.
And then Philip, whatever you want to tell, chime in. So the first time that we basically went out and did anything, my husband and I, it was before we even had kids when we moved here with Philip. He said, y'all should come with us to Wine on the West Side. And we were like, oh, that sounds like so much fun. So we went with Philip to Wine on the West Side. And again, we didn't know anyone here. My husband knew the people he worked with, but they weren't at Wine on the West Side. And I swear to you, Philip got stopped every 1 second. Philip. I didn't even see him. Me and my husband ended up having to just be on our own because Philip is working the room. He is working the streets. Everyone wants to talk to him and give him a hug. What can he say?
I mean, when you've been in the business 50 years in the same town, the same community, you know a lot of people, and I'm blessed with a lot of great friends, and I enjoy talking to people.
And I mean, growing up in my town, Longview, Texas is where I grew up. I remember the radio personalities were celebrities.
Right.
You're like, wow. And radio used to be, the only medium to listen to music. And still, I feel like in this area, it is very popular terrestrial radio.
It absolutely is. Research just this week indicates that.
Oh,
yes.
There you go.
The majority of Americans get their new country music from radio.
Well, that's encouraging.
That is very encouraging.
But Philip is going to, we talked about, maybe restart his podcast?
Possibly, yes.
I mean, he's got the content. We could just go back to 1985 and start from there.
Well, Chelsea, it was you who helped me start the podcast. We called it Behind the Curtain of Country Music.
Yes.
And I did that even before podcasts became really popular.
It was.
I enjoyed it, but it was a lot.
It is a lot.
So I decided I'm going to pause this for now, but I was telling you earlier, I will still occasionally get a notification that someone has listened to that podcast from whatever year that was.
Yes, it needs a brand new rebrand.
Maybe relaunch it.
Yes, a relaunch, but I'm sure there are people at the radio station now that help with podcasts.
Of course.
Okay, so it's people are
we can
come
do
up
it.
to speed.
We can do it.
It definitely needs to be done. It would be the most popular podcast in all of Cookeville.
I don't know about that, but I would certainly like to restart that, and perhaps I will.
And for those that don't know, Philip's daughter is Leanne, and she's in the band. She's a beautiful singer. Her voice is like an angel.
Thank you.
And she's in the band, Caleb and Leanne. And my editor-in-chief, Andrew Buckner, which is how I met Andrew.
Correct.
Is their lead guitar player. And again, another tie-in with Philip. The only reason that, thank the Lord, I have Andrew now is because of Philip.
You're giving me way too much credit.
No, give credit where it's due. But they put on an incredible show, so you can follow them on social media. They have an album out on Spotify and find their music. It's gorgeous. Again, Leanne's voice is just so pure. And I've heard a lot of voices being in music, and so have you. And it's just fabulous. And I know Philip gets excited. The whole posse is at the Caleb and Leanne shows. Philip's got about 7 people around him at all times. Friends.
Well, my entourage.
He does have an entourage.
That is a joke.
No, I mean, Philip has a lot of good, close friends, which is awesome to see.
I love to expand that circle.
Yes.
I like to hang out with.
I don't know if we have more room for more friends. And his wife plays bunco and does all the things, so they're just the best. But anyway, Philip, thank you so much for coming on. And where can people find you?
Where can they find me on social media?
Yes.
Just Philip Gibbons. I'm on Facebook, Instagram.
With one L.
Philip with one L. Thank you.
Yes.
Exactly.
I had to teach myself that many times. And anyways, Philip, thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you, Chelsea. It's always a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you. Until next time.